it's Carly McAvoy. We're talking about volume and surface area today, and this video is about the volume of a pyramid. The volume of a pyramid is 1/3 BH. This should sound familiar because for a cone, the volume was 1/3 BH as well. But remember, B is the area of the base. And when you have a pyramid, you might have a square or you might have a rectangle, and so the base varies depending on the shape. Okay. What about this one? Find the volume if you have a base of a pyramid is 120 meters wide by, 120 meters by 105 meters with a height of 102. Okay, so our base in this case is length times width because that's the area of a rectangle. So we have volume equals 1/3 base, which I'm going to say is length times width. It's just 120 times 105, and then times the height, which is 102. What's the units going to be on this problem? Well, as always, when we have volume, we're going to be talking about to the third power. Okay, so I'm going to put this in as 1/3 times I'll put parentheses here, 120 times 105. Notice I threw a decimal in there just so it would give me a decimal answer, times 102. And that gives me 428,400. If we wanted to round all of our answers to have a hundredths place there, we could add 2 zeros to that. This was meters, so we're talking about cubic meters. That's just plugging into a formula, but understanding that capital B is suggesting a base, and the base can change depending on the figure. All right, so then we have surface area of a pyramid. Surface area is a little trickier to think about with a pyramid. This P stands for the perimeter. S is that slant height. Remember, the slant height is that length of a side like that, and the capital B is the base. Again, in this case, it was length times width. Okay, so the B is the base, the P is the perimeter, and the lateral surface area doesn't include that base. Now, lateral surface area would just be these slanted sides and not that base that we're talking about. So we would have no plus B on that. I don't know what happened to the equal sign there. Okay, so I think I can explain this formula to you very nicely with this picture. For one thing, we're talking about P being the perimeter. That's the perimeter of this base. So we have those 4 sides. And also, I just want to remind you that the letters used for slant height are not always standard. You may see it as S or L or even as, and the height is H or A, which stands for altitude. You can usually determine what they're talking about by the context. But to look at this formula, if we take our pyramid and we lay that, so this is a 6 by 6, so this is square on the bottom. If we were to lay that flat and just lay all 4 of those triangular sides down, what do we actually have? When we look at it as a 2-dimensional, we can see that we have a base, which is going to be 6, the perimeter is going to be 6, 6, 6, and 6, right? And the sides are each triangles. We have all these triangles, right? So if we want to know the surface area for a triangle, this would be 6 times 12 divided by 2. And this would be 6 times 12 divided by 2. And this would be, and they all 4 would be, right? 6 times 12 divided by 2. 6 times 12 divided by 2. Well, everything's being divided by 2, and we're talking about the perimeter, which would be 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. So it's really just that we have 4 of these triangles. That makes the perimeter by adding up those 4 sides times this is really just the altitude of that triangle right there, or the height of that triangle. And that's why we end up getting the perimeter times S, because the perimeter is this 4 sides times that height, but then divided by 2 because triangles we divide by 2. So that's kind of interesting, right? And then the capital B, of course, is the base, the 6 times 6. So that's what's happening there. It makes sense when you look at it in a flattened form. But anyway, the surface area is going to be our perimeter, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, or 24, times our slant height, which they gave us was 12, divided by 2 plus the base, which is 6 times 6. And you could say 6 squared there. Well, I can see that 24 divided by 2 is 12, and 12 times 12 is 144 plus 36. And I could add those together, 10, 180. And what would the unit be here? Well, we're talking about square units, and that's centimeters in that picture, so it's centimeters squared. What about the lateral surface area? Well, the lateral surface area is just the perimeter times the slant height divided by 2, which we see was right up here. 24 times 12 divided by 2 is 144, and in that case, that's also centimeters squared. So if you have this kind of idea in your head that you can flatten it out, you can kind of see what's happening there. And you could just go through and find the area of all 4 of these parts, find the area of that, and get your answer. Because what is 6 times 12 divided by 2? Well, that's 4 times 6 times 12 divided by 2, right? Because we have 4 of those triangles, plus the 36, which is our base, which is our length times width, or in this case, side times side. And what does this equal? Well, 2 goes into 12 6 times, so I'm going to get 4 times 36 plus 36. And if I was to do that, 4 times 36 plus 36, I get 180, which is what I got when I did that over here a different way. But you can see what's happening. I have 4 triangles and the base, and that's still going to be 180 centimeters squared. So it's a nice way to look at that, and it's not as hard as it originally looks when you think about it. Okay, have a great day.